Hello and welcome to the Ember Live. I'm going to be your host today for this week, 12/2/2018. That's December 2nd, 2018 for any of our European listeners. With us today, besides myself, is Mark.
Hello and welcome.
Interesting. And also Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt.
All
I'm
right,
not going to do my normal thing that I do, though, because that's a little too unprofessional.
Whenever possible, we try to refer each other by name, but of course, please try to listen to our voice. Hopefully, we sound enough apart, though accents do play a little bit of a role in that. So the Ember Live, we've been a little bit of a hiatus here for the past couple of weeks, but we're back. We have some interesting news articles that have accumulated over that span of time. So a little bit of what we're bringing you this week might seem slightly dated, maybe a week or two out, but then again, we had the holiday in the United States. Thanksgiving is still a major holiday. The Canadians haven't quite copied it yet.
Those dastardly Canucks!
So our three hosts today are all from the United States. Eventually, we do hope to do some rotation and give a little bit of a bigger perspective. But for right now, this is what we're going to make do with. With that in mind, we're going to jump in. We're going to pull some articles up here in just a moment. The first one actually does come to us from Wisconsin. So once we have that pulled up, we can jump right in. All right, there we go. This one is, Wisconsin District investigates boys' apparent Nazi salute. This is from November 12th, just a couple weeks ago. So jumping in to read a little bit here. Baraboo, Wisconsin. A Wisconsin school district is investigating a photo of a group of high school boys giving what appears to be a Nazi salute, drawing a strong rebuke on social media. Baraboo Superintendent Lori Mueller said she became aware of the photo Monday after it was posted on social media. The photo of more than 60 male students dressed in suits shows many with their right arm extended upward while posed on the steps of the Sauk County Courthouse. Short aside, superintendent for those outside of the United States or outside of our school systems, that basically means they're in charge of the local school district on the county level. Mueller did not say what occasion may have brought the students together, but said the photo appears to have been taken last spring. Some of the boys are wearing boutonnieres. Mueller said it wasn't taken on school grounds or at a school-sponsored event. The school district is investigating this situation and is working with parents, staff, and local authorities. If the gesture is what it appears to be, the district will pursue any and all available and appropriate actions, including legal, to address the issue. Now, that's the part that I can't even keep a straight face. To address the issue, Mueller said in a letter to parents and guardians.
Okay.
So, I just think we should
can we pan down just a little bit just to pull the photo?
Roll it down.
This right here, this picture right here.
Hey, Dave, can you bring the camera up a bit? It's a little low, just about this high.
Those guys is saying,
yeah, just about that high, right?
Bring it down a little bit. Bring it down a little bit.
So.
Legal action. Come on.
We don't even know if this was their official prom photo or anything. This may have just been one they pranked the photographer. This is
right.
Oh my god.
This might be the list of this might be like 4 or 5 different pictures, right? And this is like now make a joke picture, right? You ever done that?
Let's get one of us all jumping and then they give this just to mess with the photographer or whoever's taking the photo.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Hey, it's better than dabbing, okay?
Oh, dabbing.
This will get better. I have something dark and disturbing from Wisconsin because I lived there for a time. Other than the fact the state exists, I actually have a little bit of perspective to throw in later in this article, just because this is nothing. This is nothing to what the teens do up there. Like this, it seems like this is the worst it could be. It gets worse. So
this is on par with what Dank did. Count Dank.
Well, we don't know that for sure, and we'll dig through the article here a little bit to see if there's any merit to this, because at least it's the Associated Press. It's not Vox or anything going on.
Or the New York Times or that type of shit.
I say we continue reading because, hot take.
The photo spread quickly on Twitter Sunday night and Monday morning with the hashtag #BarabooProud, which is often used by the district to promote its activities and athletic programs. The Baraboo Police Department said it was assisting with the district's investigation. Round them up, boys!
Get them! Go get them! We got some of
What's
them.
great is hold on, we'll get to the population count. We'll realize how big this police department actually has to travel for this. The photo drew widespread condemnation, including from the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial and Museum in Poland, with a state senator who represents Baraboo, a town of about 12,000 residents. That's about 115 miles northwest of Milwaukee. The only reason why I laughed when I first read that is like, why is it relevant to Milwaukee? Oh yeah, that's an area that went Trump. Madison is actually the state capital, and it's closer to Baraboo. They could have also said the Wisconsin Dells, which everybody knows the Dells is where the water parks are and stuff like that, because there's nothing else to do in the summer. Wisconsin.
And it's a
water park,
and it's a gigantic fucking tourist trap.
Yeah.
Don't ever go to the Dells, Mark. Ever.
So finish.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Wisconsin man.
I mean, you can just make sure it's with your family of an appropriate age, because otherwise you're just a lonely guy walking around a water park full of minors. But
Just a fat son of a bitch.
this is why every single day we work hard to educate. We need to explain what is the danger of hateful ideology rising. Auschwitz, with its gas chambers, was at the very end of the long process of normalizing and accommodating hatred. All right, I don't think that's normalizing it anymore, but you know that could just be that's just the extreme end of it. But the Auschwitz Memorial tweeted. So this basically is now an international incident. An outdated prom photo is now an international incident. Thanks, Wisconsin.
Thanks.
Thanks, Auschwitz Memorial.
And you wonder why on local radio stations everywhere in the U.S. there is sometimes a segment called "Escape from Wisconsin."
Escape from. I'm concerned now.
Democratic Senator John Erpenbach, whose district includes Baraboo, suggested teenagers are taking their cues from President Donald Trump.
Bullshit.
Trump duration syndrome.
Now the proximity to Milwaukee is very critical. It's 3-hour drive from Milwaukee. No wonder the hatred spread that far on this random salute.
So
hold on. There's no room in the world for anything like that at all, which will give evidence to the contrary. From what they're seeing out of the White House, that it's okay to be intolerant and racist. Never is, never was, never will be, Erpenbach said. So I said, we have this internal joke. It's no secret that me and Matt live within close proximity to each other, and we have a joke within our group of friends that whenever somebody is being particularly let's say aggressive and dictating things to our group, we always say, oh yeah, have you seen Kyle? He's about that tall. You haven't seen Kyle?
Seen Kyle!
Inferring the person as being a little too fascist for our tastes at the moment.
Being a real fashy.
There's very much so a room for making fun of Nazis.
Isn't that how you deal with Nazis? You just make fun of them?
No, clearly you're supposed to be scared, and you're supposed to rack around in the chamber when someone jokes about them.
They're Nazis. They're fucking dude. They're ethno-nationalists that sit there and try to tell you that there is some sort of superiority for white people, and I'm just like, no,
when not they do nothing.
Not in any of the people that I fucking know.
So, in a critical examination of this photo, let's just take a quick gander at the actual photo here.
Let me see if I can pull it up.
I don't even say you have to click on it. You can tell there's no obvious Trump symbols. Yeah, let's pull that down before we get accused of doxing anybody. Let's not click on tweets.
Too late.
Yeah. This is why we have practices for a reason, folks, just so we can fuck it up when we go live. There's no obvious link here to any conservative party. There's no link to President Donald Trump in particular. There's no indications of any political motive to this. There's even 2 or 3 guys in there that aren't doing it. You can clearly see, like the guy in the far right with the bow tie.
Is there one of the guys doing like the OK symbol?
Yes. Wait, I think yeah.
Look at the guy in the front, the lower right-hand corner is losing his mind. He can't even believe they're about to do this.
Obviously a joke.
But that didn't stop the reaction from this photo from, let's just the next part of the article. The White House did not immediately respond to an email for comment seeking a response to Urban.
It's almost like he has more important things to worry
Then
about.
deal with some fucking kids being a bunch of edgy boys out in Wisconsin. Like,
you know who else didn't respond? Ron Paulson, the former Secretary of the Treasury. He didn't respond to anything because he had nothing to do with this.
You know who also didn't respond? Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, where's Eddie? Yeah, I need a hot take from the Murph. Let's go. Democratic Governor-elect Tony Evers said the actions in the photo have no place in Wisconsin. I don't know. It looks like they have the Sauk County Courthouse, and added, "Intolerance and bigotry must never be tolerated." Intolerance and bigotry must never be tolerated.
Completely unaware.
Where's that Office joke where it's just like, this is a place for tolerance and acceptance, and you should just get the hell out.
Shit.
There's only two types of people I don't like in this world. People who are intolerant of other people's cultures, and the Dutch.
And the Wisconsinites. Oh, yeah. GOP Governor Scott Walker didn't immediately issue a statement, and a spokeswoman didn't immediately respond to a request for comment.
Because he was busy doing things that actually mattered for the state of Wisconsin.
I also I think we were talking about this a little bit. The hashtag Baraboo Proud. Maybe they were literally just showing their disgust with the town slogan. Maybe this is an ironic Nazi salute.
Yeah.
To get them to drop the pride in Baraboo Proud. So a group called Baraboo Young Professionals organized a rally at the county courthouse for Monday afternoon in a Facebook post. This organized a counter-protest. In a Facebook post, Sherry Schaff invited people to bring out our best symbols of love, and let's spread more love than hate.
By bashing Nazi skulls in.
It's not the first time Baraboo High School students have been accused of using racially controversial symbols. In 2012, a group of students drove trucks around displaying Confederate battle. So they have a history of being edgy boys. Confederate battle flags to commemorate a friend who was killed in a car crash. The students removed the flags at the request of school officials. Okay. Many associate the flag with slavery, segregation, whites. You don't say. A week before last week's midterm elections, area residents received white nationalist propaganda in their mailboxes. The single-page flyers with the headline "White Lives Matter" linked to websites promoting nationalist and anti-Semitic views.
I wonder if 4chan trolled these people.
We're going to have to do a follow-up on this. I realized I didn't read that last paragraph strong enough when I first read about this article, and I'm like, I actually want to see what's in that flyer, because if it's something like a men's rights activism page, and it's white supremacists.
So I got a few things. So let's just to go over this properly. So we got a hot take of Oy vey intensifies levels. We got a hot take about Trump derangement syndrome, and we also have that fucking Democrat guy saying, "Oh, we don't have a history of this." Has a history of it. Oh. It's almost like teenagers are teenagers.
Well, see, this is, I don't ever want to have egg on her face. Because if it does turn out that these kids, or even like most of them, were involved with some sort of white supremacist group or ethno-nationalist group or unironic Nazis, that sort of thing, like we have to take that in stride and go, okay, obviously it wasn't a joke. But all evidence aside, with my knowledge of Wisconsin teens, they do the edge. Okay, so for those listening in, feel free to Google this term, and before it gets clipped, I have to say it close together in one exact term. Coon bashing? Not what it sounds like. Despite when I first heard it, I thought it sounds exactly like what it sounds like. And I was describing this to another person inside the Liberalist International Association from overseas, and it sounds as psychotic as it is. Apparently, coon bashing is when a group of Wisconsin youths, because there's nothing to do in small town Wisconsin but bowl or do drugs. So the third option is coon bashing, where after school, one of them will illegally acquire some form of alcohol. They will proceed to then roll around near the woods or in a field, because there's a lot of farmland up there, obviously a lot of woodlands too. And they will search for small animals, preferably like gophers, raccoons, badgers. They will then all jump out of the truck, run the animal down, and proceed to beat the animal to death in various ways.
What the fuck?
Is there any coincidence that the largest number of serial killers in the United States have come out of Wisconsin?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what the fuck?
Which is why I just sit here and laugh. Like, you think a Nazi salute's the worst thing going on in Wisconsin?
And I thought Florida was terrible. Jesus Christ!
I'm sure they have their own version in Florida. Apparently, if you look up the Urban Dictionary entry on this, and we're not going to pull up Urban Dictionary on a live stream, but we're not that dumb. But apparently it's something that is spread around the United States.
Why?
So
Wow.
they could find way. I bet half those kids in there have living in a town of less than 12,000 residents have been coon bashing.
I want to go to Florida and hug an alligator now because I'm sad.
Don't. Those things are terrible, awful creatures. Now, I love this I love this last paragraph, right? Because it's like this is one of those things where they're trying to make in your head link two things that might not be linked together, right? So we go through this whole entire article describing that these kids were doing this supposed Nazi salute for whatever reason, right? And then at the very end, after they've gone through this whole entire thing, a week before last week's midterm elections, area residents received white nationalist propaganda in their mailboxes. The single-page flyers with the headline "White Lives Matter" linked to websites promoting nationalist and anti-Semitic views, right? There's nothing in this paragraph that links it to anything that these kids, like any of these kids being involved in it. Nothing at all. Nothing fucking at all on here, right? So this could be a situation where they're trying to link in your head the fact that some of these kids were probably sending out this propaganda when it's probably not.
I would not be surprised.
And it's just like, you fucking piece of shit asshole media fucks. For God's sakes.
All right. Should we move on to the next article? Because, Jesus.
Yeah, like we're going to have to, it's a wait and see on that slightly, but at the same time, all evidence points to it's probably some sort of elaborate in-joke, and they were just trying to make something absurd.
Yeah.
Probably.
Not even boys will be boys, but just like, this is the
edgy
equivalent
Wisconsiners will be edgy Wisconsiners.
Yeah, they've done edgier things in the past, as the article even admits. So it's not even a nothing burger, but it's more like unless you find one Nazi out of the group, you don't really have a leg to stand on. But we know the media is going to find a Nazi in the group.
Right.
Of course.
All right. So the next article actually came to us from the Sydney Morning Herald, which is slightly more serious, more banter on this one than anything else, because apparently in the U.S., white supremacists have infiltrated police and military to get weapons training. From New York, law enforcement, the military, and politics in the United States have been infiltrated by white supremacists. Oh, the politics have, who use it to recruit others and gain paramilitary training. The claim, by a former neo-Nazi skinhead who now works as an anti-racist activist, is supported by internal reports on local policing by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the top domestic law enforcement agency in the U.S. Christian Piccolini, I don't know, Christian, a 44-year-old award-winning activist from Chicago, who now works to de-radicalize racist extremists, says members of his former neo-Nazi gang pursued careers with police departments, joined the military, or ran for political office. Quick jump in before we go onto anything here. He actually does have a TED Talk available where he goes into his history combating. He was a former white supremacist. He was a neo-Nazi skinhead and all these other things. The TED Talk is available on YouTube. I believe anybody wants to check it out in their own time. Had some interesting insights in it when I watched it. I watched it way before I read this article. He's been in the public eye here for quite a while, which the article will even reveal. One thing, though, is the seems like if your job is to find diseases, you find diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is
if you're an inquisitor, you
Yeah.
find witches everywhere you go.
Yeah. There is no secret to this that radical political elements across the world have actually found their ways into various military and police institutions, not just the United States. So I don't really take kindly to the accusations just the United States.
Yeah.
But from everything I understand about the military, from former military members, especially Marines, U.S. Army, that sort of thing, the fire team justice, as they call it, has a way of taking care of those guys. Because if there's a couple black guys in the unit and one of them indicates that they're not going to fight just as hard for what they consider a brotherhood, a natural fraternity of combatants, the band of brothers, they tend to take care of that inside the unit, or the guy eventually.
Oh, they soap him. They soap that fucker.
Yeah, they soak sop the guy, or soap sock.
There you go. There you go. But no, it's stupid. And here's another problem, right? Okay, you want like weapons training? You don't need to go to a police or in the army.
Yeah,
this shit is really easy. Not only that, but there's like crazy fuckers out in the woods there with their compounds and shit, just ripping and roaring, ready for like government to collapse or something. You can get training literally anywhere.
Yeah,
this is just overblowing it.
Yeah, and a lot of people think like the police academies, whether in the United States or abroad, are some sort of strict in and out policy. The police academy's job is to provide you the training to be a police officer, primarily in the state or area that you're training to be a police officer. It's not direct to employment. Yeah. There is a whole nother interviewing process, background check, and everything else that goes into it, which we'll dig a little into this article. I'll tell you what I'm looking for when we see it again. A lot of these old skinheads and KKK have gone into the mainstream, Christian told Fairfax Media. Many people from my crew went on to be Chicago police officers. They went on to be prison guards, and they certainly took their ideology with them. A lot of people that I know ended up enlisting in the military to recruit racists and to get weapons and combat training. Christian says he frequently gets requests for help from people in the military or parents or friends concerned by rhetoric within the ranks. They are denying the Holocaust, their views are in line with white supremacists and white nationalists, and they are coming back from serving in the military angry, he says. So what I was looking for in there is that they went on to be prison guards. Because a lot of these institutions, I don't want to say I have absolute faith in them, a lot of these institutions have ways of working out the assholes. That's the best way I can say. I know for a while there was actually a guy that I was employed with when I was working for a major company, and he used to be a police officer. Just kept talking about how he used to be a police officer. He was in the military. He used to be a police officer, and he was trying to become a police officer in this area.
I'm hard as fuck.
After he had already been fired from a police department in the area. And guess what? When I asked my relative, who was a police officer, about him, she goes, "Oh, that asshole? Yeah, he's never getting a job around here." He's a total dick. He hits on the other female police officers. Like, they have the blue code of silence works both ways. Once they've shoved you out, you're out.
Yeah,
you don't get back in. They do have systems in place to weed these people out.
Oh God! Look, he just had to look sexier, and then he wouldn't have got kicked out.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So this is like I said, I had some stuff to diatribe on here, but Christian's experience is echoed by a 2015 FBI counterterrorism policy guide that highlights its investigations into domestic terrorism. The FBI identified active links to officers who were employed by some of the 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States. 2006 FBI intelligence reports also flagged infiltration of law enforcement agencies by white supremacist groups. According to Christian, it was late August far-right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia that awoke many people to the mainstreaming of white nationalism in the U.S. Among the chaos, a woman was killed when she was run down by a vehicle driven by a man linked to white supremacist groups. President Trump said the rally, marked by clashes between rival protesters, included very fine people on both sides.
Maybe it's because he was trying to make sure that we don't dichotomize to the enemy tribe and our tribe, and we don't fucking murder each other in the streets. Oh, wait. Rationality is not allowed.
No, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. All of those people were fucking Nazis. Every single one of them. They showed up at that goddamn rally. They wanted to kill all the black people. You don't fucking know what you're talking about. You fucking racist, bigot, fuck.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm white. I'm sorry I'm male. Oh, boy. Also, by the way, I'm just gonna say this article seems more damning of the guy who gave the TED Talks than the other Nazis, because just picture after picture after picture of the fucking guy who was, stop being a Nazi. Like, what the
Well,
fuck?
I mean, if he says he's reformed, he's no longer, and he's working to get people out, which is an admirable thing on its own. But
Absolutely.
let's actually crack that nut a little bit. Let's actually go down below the photo of just him, his headshot. In 2006, this is the part that interests me about him as a character, as a person. Just because I said this to somebody else, he feels like, to me, the equivalent of the Anita Sarkeesian of the anti-Nazis.
Really?
Yeah, we'll break this down. In 2016, Christian won an Emmy Award for his directing and producing role in a public service campaign called "There Is Life After Hate." The Nazi frequency, aimed at helping de-radicalization. The reasons why people might join a neo-Nazi movement or fly from Middle America to Syria to join ISIS are similar. It's a broken individual's search for identity, community, and purpose. For people who might have potholes they can't navigate around, sometimes the detours take you down a pretty dark path. Life After Hate's work was acknowledged by the Obama administration in 2016 and awarded a $400,000 grant from the Department of Homeland Security, only to find it rescinded by the Trump administration last year. There was no explanation, said Christian. Keep reading on, and Christian quit Life After Hate last year. The group continues without him and raised $700,000 from crowdfunding to fill in the government funding cut. They made more money without the government to fight this stuff than if they had taken the funding from the government.
It's almost like it's a good idea to fund a group that advocates for de-radicalization, that people are going to support that and give them money because they view it as a merit to society to have a counter radicalization group exist, right? Like, it's fucking weird.
Charity shouldn't be government mandated?
Oh, you're saying that the government shouldn't get 50% of my money to give to groups? What a shocker. It's almost like people can scrounge up the money if they care for something enough themselves.
Oh, you don't like Nazis? No. Zenviales in your taxes, yes.
Right.
And you cooperate with us. Yeah, boy. The fight to combat extremism is not just an American issue, and Christian sees similar patterns in the U.S., Europe, and even Asia, which is the most honest thing I saw in the article, to be honest. This is not something that's any type of U.S.-based trend. Really, I mean, it doesn't speak to any form of stability, but if you look in some of the Southeast Asian countries, they have a huge problem with ideological groups taking over military wings in their government. So this is not an issue that's unique to the United States. It is unique that it happens more in our country just because of the size of our military. So there's just more opportunities to, so to speak, slip through the system. That's why I think it's really important to focus on the fact that the individual units, commanding officers, and even non-commissioned officers have a really good way to get a beat on these guys. And I think even participating in like any KKK meeting, Nazi meetings, and things like that is actually grounds for dishonorable discharge, if I'm not mistaken. I need to probably do a little more research.
I have to double check on that.
I don't know about that, but I will flat out tell you this, that is number one step, breaking that shit down, because they can't have infighting within the ranks. So they break you to make sure that shit does not stick around. I mean, there's still memes and shit that go around, like fucking, I know Marines very well. They joke about race and shit, but no one is ever hardcore racist. It's mainly fucking hating the commanding officer.
You listen to other guys in the world military, and not just the United States. The United States is definitely in this. But if you listen to other guys that are both in the military, they will constantly go after each other's race and things like that because it just doesn't matter to them. Once you find, like, even between, all right, so you have a USA service member interacting with a similar branch from the UK, they're going to give each other more shit on the branch, on the nationality, than anything else.
Oh god,
that's the only rivalry between them, is whether or not they're a better military. It's a meritocratic system that, if you don't actually trust the guy standing next to you because of his skin color, you're screwed.
You're an idiot.
Yeah,
and you're fucked.
Yeah.
he's going to be saving you in a firefight. You can't let stuff like that get to you. And that's why the U.S., the military system, I think in Western democracies is really good at weeding that out.
And also, here's one thing for everyone to know. You want to know what breaks racism better than just talking about it? Hating our commanding officers from the
Yeah, hating officers is what unites them.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you end up with a you end up with a Spears. Other times you end up with a fucking piece of shit like Dyke from Band of Brothers. And
so what you're saying is we can identify the white nationalists as the people that suck up to the officers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, basically.
So this is just an interesting point to what you mentioned, Mark. It's a quote from Christian within the article. They're using the rhetoric of the other, invading and destroying culture to scare people into becoming more nationalistic or separatist. And I know I use this term so much, but the lack of self-awareness in this article is staggering. Because the first thing they tried to do is paint it as a Trump-based issue, or a current political climate issue.
It's because of Donut Trump.
Rather than realizing we even had soldiers that were organizing as communists. This is before McCarthyism and everything like that. But we had soldiers that were trying to organize as communists inside the US military. It goes both ways, and it's been there ever present because it's a volunteer-based force.
Yep.
It's not a draft base. It's not mandatory service or anything else that you want to call it. It's a volunteer base. So you take what you can get and you try to train them up from within that.
So what you're saying is service doesn't guarantee citizenship.
No.
Okay.
So that's an interesting fix to the migrant crisis, which, speaking of migrants, our next article dives into that.
All right.
Which I believe Matt said he wanted to take the lead on just because he found this one particularly peculiar to himself.
Yeah, no, this article. All right, so starting off with this, migrant mom falls off border fence, is impaled in front of her kids. Officials say. We don't even have to move beyond anything besides the title for a minute, because that is one of the most disingenuous titles for an article I have ever read in my entire life.
Once you read the article, yeah.
I was gonna say impale. It seems like it was like a fucking Mortal Kombat finisher, just blood pouring everywhere.
This is one of those you got to put an asterisk and say technically.
Technically impaled, right?
I'm waiting.
All right, so this is great. A migrant mother who was trying.
Tell us the city. Tell us the city.
Oh, this is in San Diego.
No, it's in a whale's vagina. Go ahead.
A migrant mother who was trying to illegally enter the United States while scaling a border fence fell off, and was impaled. Fell off a fence that she was trying to climb while illegally entering the United States.
Guatemalan fell on.
Why was she on the fence?
Of rebar, concerta wire, which were being used to replace a border fence.
Why was she on the fence?
And rebar pierced the woman's side and buttocks in front of her children, aged 3 and 5.
Let's take a moment of introspection here, because at the end of it, I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna bleed my heart a little bit. This is still a human being that was nearly killed. So let's keep that in perspective a little bit.
Non-life-threatening injury. I'm so sad. Oh, she almost was killed.
It sucks that she fell off the fence and got hurt.
Wait, where does it say non-life threatening? Because
it says literally in the third paragraph.
Oh.
Yeah. So it sucks that she fell off the fence and got hurt, right?
No, that's what you gave.
No, this is one of those calm down, because this is one of those 2 inches to the right. That's what basically I was getting at. Yeah. You don't really ever celebrate somebody having something shoved through there. Well, there are some occasions to celebrate that. But in the terms of an injury, because I was even reading this, and again, my bleeding heart came out a little bit, because I'm like, if this actually is a 26-year-old woman seeking political refuge and asylum because she is threatened, it just gets more tragic.
Right.
Like the more we look into the migrant crisis in the United States and the caravan that's coming, it just sucks to have the legitimate people washed in with the illegitimate.
Sure.
Because if she's desperate enough to climb the fence and risk death and injury to get over, you actually have to wonder, was she actually fleeing?
Sure.
It gets more tragic.
Well, here's the thing. Even if you are fleeing and there's legitimate things, it's like, just fucking there's people who haven't fled and they're still in the same situation as you, and maybe instead of just running away from your shitty country, just try to fucking change it. Like, here's the thing. Someone said this. The border between us and Mexico has basically been a fucking pressure release valve used by the Mexican government for years. And, you know, like, whenever the dissident youth and stuff, those that are disenfranchised and tired of the way things are, they just fucking encourage them to go and hop across the border so they don't have to fucking deal with them. And that's why we get all these fucking problems. If Trump actually enforces and says enough is a fucking enough, this would actually make it so that these shitty countries have to fucking change. In other words, make Mexico great again is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It'd be fucking great if that happens, because then we don't have to deal with that bullshit.
Right.
Absolutely.
No, don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, they were doing something that's illegal. I'm not saying this is very much so a quit breaking the law asshole
Right. Exactly.
sense to it. But it's more that they got to this point.
Right. Exactly.
Just even still, like, this is, I don't know how much, I don't say how much time we want to spend on this, but because it's not a quota, but because our next article also has to deal with migrants and things like that.
Mm-hmm. My main point of bringing this up is just to kind of illustrate the idea that the fucking media lies to you guys. All right, like, if you read this article, right, it seems like because my first take on that
fatality.
Was exactly, she was impaled and died, like something that happened out of Transylvania or something like that, right? That's not it at all. It just kind of scratched her ass, got her on the side a little bit, non-life threatening. So it's just like,
well, it does specifically say impaled. It did pierce through, so
technically impaled.
It's never. Let's put it this, guys. It's never fun getting stabbed. No matter how you get stabbed, it's never going to be a fun time.
Oh yeah, I love getting stabbed. No,
I don't really want to see a picture of this woman tomorrow and find out like she had it all the way through, like her liver or something, and then realize that we were oh my god, like she actually could have died.
Sure.
Nah, it says non-life threatening, so it'd have been through a butt cheek or something.
If somebody isn't crossing the border with violent intent, I don't think they need to be gunned down or stabbed or bayoneted or anything. That's basically what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
They need to be sent back across and given due medical treatment if they injured themselves on our offense. Yes. That's
reasonable.
You have a measure of responsibility. You can't neglect their medical needs. If you put glass on the top, well, your intention was to stab them, wasn't it?
I'm just thinking of the jokes like the Marines. It's like when Donald Trump gives the order that rock throwing it can be treated with live fire ammunition, and just the Marine response, "Yeet the motherfuckers!"
Yeah.
Alrighty, we're gonna switch articles completely here.
Yeah, the Marines are America's angry little bulldog. Though we don't usually cut them loose until we're ready to cut them loose.
Or we just send the 1st Infantry Division because they can just talk to the migrants.
So this is our oldest article that we're actually going to be looking at here. The only reason this was brought up to me is in relation to the migrant crisis, the migrant caravan, and everything that's coming up to the United States. When it was talked about how like the detention centers, because let's put this in perspective.
Hold on. I need to get the sad violin out for this one. All right, I'm ready for the article.
We'll get to that, but. The reason this article was brought up in context with the migrant caravan and people that are going to be claiming asylum when they come across the border, which in the in-between just for people to be aware, there's a huge thunderclap going out on Twitter and on Facebook. It's not thunderclap's dead. I just mean there's somebody instigating this rumor that crossing the border into the United States is legal as long as you intend to claim asylum. And that's not the way it works.
Turks.
If you have crossed the border illegally and are attempting to claim asylum, you have still crossed the border illegally. You've still committed a crime, and if your asylum is not granted, you will be deported, or any other infractions involved with how you cross the border, whether it involved violence or anything else. It's not just illegal because you crossed the border and screamed sanctuary. That died with the hunchback, okay? That doesn't...
Sanctuary.
Oh my god. We're synced up. This is bad.
So every time I see that come across Facebook or Twitter or anything, or YouTube, the Young Turks, anything, my first reaction is that lady from the guy, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Because the families that were in these detention centers along the border most of them came through under the exact same premise and are claiming asylum. This is why it takes time to process, because asylum involves a bureaucratic process of court hearings, legal representation, and everything else that needs to be granted in our legal system. Now, I'm not saying we need to go outside of the rule of law here, but that means we don't just let them run around the country while we're hearing their claim for asylum. There is a process. They need to be. It's like the Sorting Hat, only with more cages.
And asylum is a completely necessary aspect of a Western democracy, because there are going to be situations that we want, like for example, let's say like Imam Tawhidi, right? He was in a country like Iran or Saudi Arabia, preaching his ideas of what Islam should be, and the Iranian government and the fucking theocracy would want to murder his ass, full stop. And if he applied for a political asylum to live in the U.S., I would want that man here, because his ideas and visions of what he wants Islam to be, basically what it de-radicalizes the entire thing. And if we could promote and slowly move the radical elements of Islam into the ideas that he sees, then that religion would be far more compatible with Western society than it would be the way it is now. And if we didn't have that idea of political asylum, he would just be there. His ideas he'd get shot in the head, and that's the end of it. Rather than being able to say, no, you actually, you're an idea of what Western civilization should be. We need to make sure that you are safe. That way you can spread your message into those areas that need it more.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I'd see it. But the one problem is here, I don't know if I believe these people when they say, oh, well, I heard if I just jump the fucking border, I can get asylum. Like, it's like, okay, these countries have internet access. These people aren't completely moronic. I don't know whether to believe it or not, but that's just because I'm a very much doubtful person when anyone ever tries to make a plea, but that's just me. And frankly, I think all this could have been stopped if we just got rid of some of the garbage laws we have, because here's the thing. This whole detention and stuff happened like under, if I remember, Clinton. Back before that, you never got separated from your family. You just were kicked out. End of discussion.
The separation from the family actually started under Obama.
Oh,
which was under pressure. Obama. Under pressure because the women and children, the mothers were being kept with the children, so the children weren't allowed to stay with the fathers, and the women and children were being kept in the same detention areas. Which, even if you look at the women are when I say the women that are the mothers. Are being kept in a condition that is not comfortable. It is not inhumane, but it is not a hotel. This is not a vacation for them. They are cared for. They have their medical needs cared for. They're of course given access to haircut, grooming. It's basically kind of a holding pen. It's a processing area. So keeping the kids in the same environment was basically deemed inhumane. So the response was to set up separate centers to have the kids with. So the kids can actually continue to be kids. Now, this comes with the crux of not being able to have contact with the parent anymore. So this is an older issue. Again, this is something we ran into this year, but this is on the same note of the whole tragicness of the polarization of the Trump derangement system. And I can't believe this article took so long to get to me personally, but it was brought up by somebody that really wanted to drive home how evil Trump was. And then I read the article. I'm like, this has nothing to do with Trump. So we're not going to read the header, but the title is The Exceptional Cruelty of a No-Hugging Policy. On Monday, and again, this is back from June, so everything with a grain of salt here, folks. On Monday, when ProPublica released the now infamous 7.5 minutes of audio tape recorded inside a U.S. Customs and Border Protection facility in which several wailing kids can be heard crying out for their moms and dads. Darcia Navarez clicked the link and told herself she'd do her best to listen to the whole thing. Within seconds, however, this reads like the article from the super far left liberal guy, the really, really progressive guy that fired a gun and basically got PTSD from firing a rifle. Within seconds, however, Narvaez, a professor of psychology at the University of Notre Dame, who specializes in parenting and child development, had hit the mute button. I mostly read the captions. She can't stand hearing children cry for prolonged periods of time without being comforted, she says, because I know their brains are being damaged.
So I just want to interject. Hey, Navarez, do you have children? Trust me, it might seem emotionally tugging in the first time. It's not the 20th time.
Right.
It's not even that. Like, it's...
Well, no, I'm saying, like, children cry for any reason. You don't know, like... You can start to tell if the crying is legitimate, like, distress or pain or whatever, versus just crying for no fucking reason.
Also, one of the things that is always brought forth in raising a child is the idea of the child understanding to self-soothe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not every single time mommy will come and pick you up because that patterns it conditions a pattern of behavior.
It's around 1 year old that they start telling you to teach your child independence by letting it play, letting it cry if it wants to cry. If it's not food time yet, don't just go over and feed it. If you know the child isn't hungry, don't stuff its face.
Mm-hmm.
The child will cry sometimes. It will happen. It is not brain damage when the child cries.
Yeah, right. Being damaged.
So the science that this article, I'm going to say this before we continue. The science this article is founded on is not inherently wrong. I'm not a psychologist, but this is something that's been established as well, as simple as the fostering independence concept we just talked about. Ever since the Trump administration's recent statement that it had separated nearly 2,000 children from parents facing charges of illegally crossing the border, a number since raised to more than 2,300. Troubling reports from inside the shelters where those children have been detained have been proliferated. Many describe conditions in which, whether by official, got to listen to the wording of this article for anybody listening and even you two. Many describe conditions in which, whether by official policy or not, shelter staff are prohibited or prevented from hugging or touching the detained kids.
We're gonna put a big gigantic
hundreds of whom are younger than 13 years old to comfort them. Go ahead.
We're gonna put a gigantic red circle around whether by official policy or not.
Right.
Like just put a pin in that one, and we're gonna come right back to that point. It's it.
I want to yell about that.
Some testimonies, like the one from a former Tucson, Arizona shelter worker, Antar Davidson, who quit last week because the shelter, quote, didn't have the trained staffing to handle the influx of younger, more traumatized children, allege that even siblings in the shelters are prevented from hugging one another. The breaking point for Davidson came, he says, when he was asked to tell two siblings, ages 6 and 10, that they couldn't hug each other. They called me over the radio, and they wanted to translate to these kids that the rule of the shelter is that they are not allowed to hug, he says. And these are kids that had just been separated from their mom, basically just huddling and hugging each other in a desperate attempt to remain together.
So let me just say one thing. If they're understaffed and undertrained and you're actually trained, why the fuck are you leaving, you dumb fucker? That's compounding said problem, ya bitch.
Right. When I say good take on that, that's something I didn't even think of. If he's trained, or if he claims to be trained, why is he leaving? And then claiming they don't have enough trained people. Because the other problem that they had was this was run by an NPO, but these people were actually getting paid fairly well. So it's not the pay. I think it's just, I don't know, not the environment, because none of them are even saying that they're being kept inhumanely. It's just little things like this. Okay,
they don't have much spine.
Right. Well, we'll dig a little bit more into this, because I'm pretty sure all three of us can come to the same conclusion as three men. I assumed your genders. Sorry, gentlemen. 3 men over the age of 18.
Attack helicopter.
I'm
Southwest
offended
Key,
and I'm reporting you.
Southwest Key, the nonprofit that operates several shelters along the U.S.-Mexico border, including the one where Davidson worked, told NPR it has a policy of allowing hugs and comforting touches in certain circumstances.
Why is there more to this article?
Circle that. Southwest Key told NPR it has a policy of allowing hugs and comforting touches in certain circumstances. A South Texas shelter, meanwhile, told the American Academy of Pediatrics president Colleen Kraft, when she visited, that there was no federal regulation prohibiting workers from touching kids in their care. Still, what Kraft described witnessing in South Texas were staffers who believed they were not allowed to touch the kids to sue them and behaved accordingly, and children who cried and cried yet were not physically comforted.
Okay, let me just...
this is a training issue.
Here's another thing to point out. Hey, Pete. You are a lovely bald man who looks really huge. You gonna go hug some random person's kid? You gonna do that? Just a random kid? You gonna hug him?
Will there be 3 witnesses I trust as well as security cameras on it? Then I'll consider hugging the kid if they need a hug.
Nope, just a bunch of judgmental people.
I say I'm kind of good with kids. I kind of know when kids need a hug or a pat on the shoulder or like a high five, stuff like that. Some kid who's wailing because they just got separated from their mom, I'm not going to be running up and putting my hands all over them.
Exactly. That's another thing.
The social stigma against father figures acting like that. Like I almost want to say it'd be different if I was a woman, because I think we're all thinking the same thing. When we see a woman soothing a child, that's just the social norm in society, in Western society. But a man going up and hugging on the kids, you're immediately wary of it. I'd be wary if I saw somebody else doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, unless they look like a twink.
Wow,
you're just concerned.
Okay. Well, no, even I'm saying even to some extent then I see somebody, obviously a man, over eager to hug kids. You're just kind of like, got to keep my eye on that fucker.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, I don't want to say that's what's wrong with society and sound like an old man here, but like what's going on, that this is obviously a training issue where they need to teach these people that, yes, these kids are going to need some form of even if you're just putting your arm around them in front of other people and giving them a little comfort, you don't have to get touchy-feely. You just have to show empathy. You need to show emotional awareness. Another thing when you're dealing with kids is a lot of times you actually have to get down to their level. You have to actually do the slob squat in front of them. Look them in the eye. Show them that you're not looming over them, that you're not scary, that you can actually relate to them. It's human empathy. Basically, these people need to be trained to display proper empathy towards these kids. But so far, we've detected 2 different organizations, and possibly the third being the United States government, that has no official policy that ever told these people you're not allowed to hug the kids.
It's just social stigma.
So now we're going to go into the part of the article that tells us how terrible it is that they didn't touch the kids.
The way you say it.
Because that's the social stigma. They're trying to make these people seem like monsters for being scared of this interaction.
How dare you not touch me?
All of us, all 3 of us, completely understand the idea of why you might be averse to giving a child a hug, especially when you're not the parent and you're in effectively it would be an orphanage, right? Like we have all of the situations going along with like the Catholic Church with all of their abuse scandals. You, as a human being, as a rational human being in the United States, it's having to interact with this type of situation. I understand completely that you want to go out of your way to make sure that there is not even a hint of impropriety.
Well, not even that. There's also, are you capable of helping? Right. Because what if this kid actually has some sort of trauma that's going? What if their dad died, the coyote killed him, or something like that on their way up the border? Like you don't know exactly what you're going to unpack when that kid starts to cut loose. If you feel overwhelmed by the prospect of having to provide that and you don't know how to do it, there's personality types basically. What if they're an introvert? They don't know what if they're just hired as a cook? They're just there to cook kids lunch. They're not there to be a psychologist.
Right.
It's a fair assessment to make that they're not going to be the first one that goes out and tries to make comfort with these kids. So if these places only staff 1 or 2 like kid experts in child therapy or anything like that, then it's going to be overworked. And they might have the official policy that without the therapist there, these kids aren't touching. Or not official policy, the local policy, the in-practice policy. Because anybody who's worked a day job in their life knows that there's the rules and then there's how you do things.
Yarp.
And I don't want to make that sound creepy, but there's literally the official policy of employees aren't ever allowed to eat on the line when they're cooking. And you're like, I'm going to get stuffed on French fries. That's what's happening.
Yup.
So there's how the rules are written, and then there's actually sometimes the rules aren't sufficient enough. And this is a bureaucratic process where these are contractors hired by the United States government that goes up to basically the highest level of government to actually get dictated on policy. So when they have a policy of like, hey, are we allowed to touch these kids to comfort them? Like, are we allowed to give them a hug? Or like, it'll literally probably come back as a hold off doing that until we figure that out. And then after a year of studies and independent review and clinical psychologists weighing in and implementation and extra security cameras and 6 months training for key personnel and all that other stuff gets implemented, you might see the policy change.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're dealing with like 10 different facilities spread out over multiple states. What are the state laws on this? Like you're dealing with federal law, federal policy, presidential policy, state law. There's a lot of checks and balances before you go in and put in this blanket policy of, oh yeah, touch the kids. Yeah, go ahead and hug them as much as you want. Like, no, you can't say that. Like, what if we got some preverts? Like, you can't do that, and you don't want the accusation of impropriety. So, like I said, let's dig the psychology here a little bit.
Oh, boy.
As anyone who's ever witnessed a, I actually have some key perspective on this particular paragraph. This is the one that actually pissed me off when I first read it, and in the debate/discussion I was with the social democrat that brought it up to me. As anyone who's ever witnessed a handoff to a babysitter or a drop-off at the first day of daycare can attest, a hug or a snuggle from a sibling or trusted adult can be instrumental in relieving some of the anxiety and even panic associated with the departure of a parent. First thing, bullshit. All that's completely wrong. Any psychologist that wrote that paragraph should feel ashamed of themselves. My parents, for a long time, were in the child care industry. There was a daycare. I've been vetted by the FBI. They have my fingerprints. They have everything on me. Okay, like this is nothing like big secret. I'm just not gonna. They're actually retired out of it now. They're too old to run the business anymore. But we had a child care facility, and there was days where I was waiting to go to school where I was there and present, and the mom in particular would bring the kid in, and the kid would start screaming. And the kid would put on this big old show, and the mom would be like, "Oh, I know, baby, it's so hard. It's so hard. I know, baby, mommy will be back later." And one of the specialists, one of the child care providers would literally have to tell them, "Please leave. You will not even be gone 30 seconds, and this kid will be fine. It's literally just going to walk over and start playing the moment you're gone. It's going to forget. It's like a goldfish, right? It's an Etch-a-Sketch that you shake once a day. It's going to be gone as soon as you're gone." And one of the moms in particular would spend like 15 minutes coddling their child. They'd arrive early to give extra time to coddle the child until one of the workers got bored enough with it one day that when you could finally start recording videos on camera, recorded it and showed it to the mom. And she was just like, "Oh," it's like, "Yeah, you might as well just sleep in an extra 15 minutes." Because the kid's got a routine. The kid comes in, it cries to the mom for a few minutes, makes the mom feel bad, and as soon as mommy leaves, it's either time for breakfast or time to go play with toys until it's breakfast time. They know the routine. They're on the schedule before we are half the time once you get them on it. Like, they even know when it's nap time because they start getting grumpy and they start getting really whiny. And it's like, "All right, you're going to bed." Like, it's just that kids are surprisingly adept at picking up patterns like humans are and schedules. So this whole first line of this paragraph that sets up everything else after this is bullshit. And I just wanted to rant about that for a minute. The research to confirm this goes far beyond anecdotes.
Bullshit!
According to decades of psychological study, positive touch from adults can not only lower stress levels in the moment, but can have long-term beneficial effects if administered regularly. And relatedly, a consistent lack of positive touch has been shown to have detrimental effects on kids as they mature. So this is a false equivalence of the study. is that, yes, if you lock a child in solitary confinement, it will probably turn into a psychotic person, probably a white nationalist. If you show the child some compassion and regular affection, as well as positive and negative reinforcement, it turns into a well-rounded individual, like a liberalist. It's just the natural way of things. Okay? Whether that involves some spankings or maybe some timeout time, as well as some great job catching that fish, son, sort of thing, they turn into a more well-rounded individual with positive and negative interaction from other humans that reinforce good and bad behavior. Duh. But that doesn't mean that they need to be coddled constantly.
Yeah, that can have negative effects.
Yeah. Everyone gets a trophy. I'm an otherkin.
Yeah, it goes from everyone gets a trophy to I'm another.
We should make an ethno state. I need a bubble. Tiffany Field, a professor of pediatrics, psychology, and psychiatry, founded the Touch Research Institute, just the dirtiest name ever, at the University of Miami School of Medicine.
Like, if you read that to me, I'd be like, that's a porn company, right? Like,
yeah. The Touch Research Institute, I would have said, is like some sort of sex toy manufacturer. But,
right.
To each their own. In the years since, she's studied the effects of touch on kids in both traumatic situations. In a 1996 study of kids whose families had been affected by Hurricane Andrew found that kids who routinely received back rubs from massage therapists saw significant improvements in their PTSD symptoms. See, this is hurricane survivors, man.
Yeah.
Like, come on, you cannot compare.
This is actually traumatic experiences of living through a fucking hurricane.
Watching your house get blown away and possibly a loved one at the same time. Yep, that's the exact same thing as having to spend a year away from your mom while she gets tried in court.
Yeah.
I understand it's traumatic. I don't know if it's the same level, right?
Yeah, it's a different scale. It has to be.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way that you could sit there and tell me that these kids are getting taken from their parents while they're being put through the system because they broke U.S. law is the same as having a child live through the Syrian civil war and watching as their parent just gets murdered in front of them because of a bunch of shit.
Especially when you tell me that the workers that are helping take care of them are nervous about being inappropriate around them.
Right.
They're not in this hellish environment. They're an environment that takes their care and health and well-being seriously, to the effect that they don't even want to be accused of doing anything inappropriate because they want to continue to provide care for you. Even the Davidson guy, maybe we've made fun of his reason for leaving, but at the same time, his main outrage was what the level of care that was being provided.
Right.
The hurricane is not sucking your family away. You're just not getting a hug on a regular basis.
Right. Right.
There's more in the article that I don't want to say we could go into. I feel like we're about an hour long now, and I don't want to spend 2 hours on this article because we literally could. If you scroll down, I don't know how much you guys read.
There's plenty of ass cancer.
Oh my goodness, especially when you get into cortisol levels and everything else. Like, and we're not medical people, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
I'm studying to be a medical person.
God help us all.
Yeah, then I said do a different write-up of this if you want, or even your own video on this at some point, because this article is just full of mafifis, ma safe space, and really what the whole problem is a bunch of people didn't want to be accused of being pedos while they were working to take care of illegal immigrant children.
Don't worry, I'll have a video on the LIA, just 240p shit mic quality, just me trying to explain it.
Hey, it works for Shu.
Yeah,
that is true.
It worked for the train video. We really need to promote our Thomas the Tank Engine following.
Oh my God,
stop.
That's a joke. We don't have a Thomas the Tank Engine following.
I'm crying internally.
Illinois school district plans to hire retired cops as armed office workers. I picked this one out of the splurge here, if you will, just because for some of our overseas people, especially in Europe, this is such a meme. I think it merits going into basically the culture of the United States. Like, we're all gun nuts, right? You guys got your gun with you right now?
Kissing it right now as we speak.
My bald eagle is cleaning mine, but otherwise it'd be in my hand. the right to self-defense in America is a cultural staple. Like, I'm just going to start this article with that, and I think all three of us can agree with that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're never going to get to a point in America where it's illegal to carry something to defend yourself with.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oh, Mark died.
No, sorry, I'm still here. Apologies about that.
Some areas prohibit you from like carrying like oversized knives and swords and things like that, but the concept of self-defense, there's nowhere in the United States where you're not allowed to pick up a broken bottle and fend for your life. You do have to make the case that you were fending for your life, but you can fend for your life. The police never go, well, you used a weapon to defend yourself, so therefore you're
Oh
guilty
no,
of the
there
crime.
actually there is one place in which you're wrong. There is I forget, I think it's like Vermont or something. Duty to flee is the term being bandied around. So instead of castle doctrine or shit like that, if you were able to run away, but you didn't, you actually can get in trouble, supposedly.
That's a slightly different concept because, yeah, that's the opposite of the stand your ground laws. So stand your ground, basically, if you choose that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere and anything like that, that's a different concept at play. But at the end of the day, if you can't run, you have the right to defend yourself.
Oh no, you'll still but the problem is in those duty to flee places, they will actually try to fuck you for any reason. Like, here was the best case I found that actually pissed me off. So, some motherfucker broke into this person's home, right? And the person, the homeowner, confronted the guy. And he, they got into a physical squabble, and the old dude managed to overpower the intruder and killed him. They actually, if I remember, threw the old guy in jail when he killed him with his fucking fist, and the guy had a knife. So that guy was using more force. The old man used less force. Still, duty to retreat. You could have ran out your window. And oh god.
Yeah, that'd be stupid. Then we're gonna have to work on that.
Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
That's fine, because the first reaction to that is this is our country and I'm inside of it. It's just like, what a dumb law, that needs to be changed. Like, it's intrinsic to our society in this country that you will defend yourself. Or you should have the option to. If you can't flee in a reasonable manner, you get to defend yourself. That's the American way.
Yeah, the idea that this guy beat the shit out of a guy with a knife and he goes to jail, that's egregious. I would never support a law that did that. I am probably one of the most liberal people you guys will meet on gun control. And my immediate response is, I can understand the idea of, like, if that guy shows up and he's like saying, get the fuck out of here. Like, guy shows up in your house and he's like threatening you and you have a reasonable form of escape, I can kind of see it. But if you decide,
I shouldn't have to run out of my house. It's my fucking house.
Well, right, but
that's the argument to be had, guys. So let's calm down and actually making the argument here, just because. But we all are sitting here agreeing that you have the right to defend yourself.
Fair enough.
All right. So the story comes from Chicago, Illinois, which, for reference, for anyone inside the United States or outside of it, Illinois is one of the most corrupt states in the union. There's an entire Wikipedia page that literally, I believe, if you Google corruption in Illinois, they will talk about the political corruption that has been rampant since about the late 1800s, about the same time as Tammany Hall in New York. The difference is that Tammany Hall is gone.
Right.
So, but the corrupt politicians in Illinois, they seem to just spring up out of the ground and they win elections. It's a miracle. You talk about the Chicago incidents with clearing the snow. There was a scandal about defunding the snow plows and embezzling the money. It's terrible. It's terrible. But Chicago is also a major metropolitan area inside the state of Illinois. It's I believe the third largest city, if you count the Chicagoland area in the United States, after, of course, Los Angeles and New York in that order. It also has the third or fourth highest population, if you count most of the Chicagoland area. It kind of dictates policy for Illinois. Now, the only reason I'm saying this as a fact is because, again, it's just coincidence these articles are popping up for us because I've lived in Illinois. I was born and raised in Illinois. Chicago is one of the most anti-gun cities in the entire United States, possibly the world, because of the level of gang violence that it has there. The citizens of this state and not this state, of that state, Illinois, and its residents in Chicago have been screaming for the right to defend themselves from the gangs for decades, and Chicago just never relents. It just makes more and more gun laws, which thereby keeps more and more guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens that want to protect themselves from the gangs.
Mm-hmm.
So gang violence continues to accelerate, and then you have people making the meme. You've heard it from the alt-right and other groups that say it's Chirac, like it's Iraq, but in the United States, Chirac.
Even rappers say it's Chirac.
Right, because they're even acknowledging the level of violence. So this particular article is interesting just because there's the north side, south side thing in Chicago. And again, this is a cultural explanation for people not understanding the article and why this article is a huge cultural shift in Chicago. North side of Chicago is basically your suburbanites. And I will not even lie and say it's mostly white. It's also the lowest crime rates. It's the suburban dream between north of, I believe, Interstate 90. Or is it 88?
I think 88's the split.
Yeah. So anything north of 88 is the suburban dream. Everybody's got their riding lawnmowers, their big SUVs. They commute into the city to work every day.
Home of the Chicago Cubs.
Right. And on the south side, you have the worst parts of town. Like, It's actually kind of funny the closer you get to Indiana, and even Indiana is the worst places in the world, in my opinion. I'd actually rather spend a night in Detroit than in Gary, Indiana.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, Gary, Indiana is a fucking shithole. Like, if you want to talk about third world countries in the U.S., that's about as close as you're going to get as Gary, Indiana.
Yeah. Which is just makes the Music Man so much funnier. Gary, Indiana, Gary.
Yeah.
So going into the meat of the story here, Chicago, Illinois, a suburban school district says it plans to hire retired police officers as armed office workers, granting them permission to carry weapons on school campuses so they might take action in the event of a school shooting. School officials, parents, and students have all been searching for a response to the ongoing horror of deadly mass shootings in our nation's schools. Some parents say more guns are not the answer, but the superintendent of the Palatine School District says his idea is about proactive protection. I want to do everything possible to make sure the children and staff members, that's the other part of that, staff members are safe in buildings. Palatine School District Superintendent Scott Thompson told WGN. It has been 20 years since Columbine, and the number of school shootings has only grown. I think they mean in total. I hate to be sarcastic, but the rates have fluctuated. That's a big meme from the left side of the fence here. From Santa Fe to Parkland and so many others, all with no apparent solution to the problem and almost no action from Washington. Now the schools themselves are thinking of how they can increase security. Thompson oversees nearly 13,000 students. That's just students. That's not staff workers for the schools. You got to figure your average like elementary school in the United States with a decent is going to have anywhere between 50 to 100 employees. Right. So for every let's say for hypothetically for every 500 students, add between 50 to 100 employees that also would need protection from school shooters. When something happens in school, you dial 911. Who shows up? Police officers. Why not have police officers right here in the building as soon as something happens so there wouldn't be like time, Thompson said.
Where we live, that's not a new thing. Like there are actually cops that are stationed that are like their job is to be security inside the high school. That's actually when I was in high school, which isn't that long ago. It was like 2005 when I graduated. There was a police officer that he'd be there at like 7:30 in the morning and he wouldn't leave till like 4. That was his job, was to just protect the school.
Yeah, same. We had 2 cops in my high school. To be honest, I think they were like shit cops. And it's like, these guys are so garbage, we're just going to have them, air quote, protect this high school. They'd probably
right,
run
but
away.
they're still cops. They're still cops. They're able to carry firearms. They're able to detain people. They're able to investigate all of the things that cops can do. They might be bad at their job, but that's a training.
Right.
Oh no, it was funny. Oh, also, they would try to find all the drug dealers in the school.
So, The retired officers would have their weapons, but would not be working as security guards. Instead, they would take on clerical and support roles in the school offices, doing things like answering phones, helping file paperwork, and collecting lunch money.
Cool.
Give me your lunch money, nerd.
They'd be paid $20 an hour and receive medical and dental benefits. So what are we benefiting from here in this program? One, it doesn't require any direct policy change from the United States government. We don't have to make new laws. We don't have to rewrite laws. We don't have to change official policy across the state. What we're doing is adding a protective layer for our students. If we can't trust former police officers to be a decent judge of when and when not to use their firearm, then we shouldn't have hired them as police officers. Now, I don't want to make that as a blanket statement and have it always apply, because you do have the odd cop that is fired for anything from something went wrong or terrible in the line of duty. Maybe they retired because they had to use their service weapon and the trauma caused. There's a lot of things to take into account there. But if they retired on good terms, why would we not be willing to take that person in to keep them on a pay scale, basically, that helps with their retirement as well? Because the benefits package for police officers, they always say, isn't enough. Like they always say that for the military too. You never know how true it is. It depends on the area they're in. But besides the point, police officers have training, but other than the security training, they're used to filing paperwork for the most part as police officers. Every arrest, every police report they have to file, incidents, they're used to codes, they're used to bureaucratic systems. They probably have connections in the city. So they're not just coming in fresh. They actually know specific teachers and students and things like that. The DARE program was also going on for a long time. So there's a lot of community outreach that police officers do. Police officers a lot of time will have on-site trauma care training for kids. So there's first aid that goes into this as well. I'm going to trust a police officer with first aid before I trust a teacher, unless that teacher only teaches first aid.
Right, exactly.
Like if I fall and break my arm, I'm going to trust the retired police officer to know what to do with a broken arm for some reason. Just call me crazy. There's other clear benefits to hiring these people in this clerical and office position that are not limited to what they could do in the event of an emergency situation like a school shooter. There's also fire. What they know what to do with fire training, first aid, CPR. We can go on about this for hours. It's not that police are perfect people, but as for safety around the kids, assuming that they're not going to be shaping their young minds and bodies, but they're just going to be there in a clerical sense and a worst case scenario, that's a really good worst case scenario option.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big agree.
I think it's a bigger show, the cultural split in Chicago and in the state, that the policies of the city and state do not reflect the needs of the people. The needs of the people want to feel secure. They want to feel like they can trust themselves to some sort of security measure and things like that. And they just don't have the tools to. So armed security guards aren't even really an option, just because armed security guards are so hard to come by in Chicago. The legal loopholes you have to jump through, or not loopholes, the legal processes you have to jump through to become an armed security guard in Chicago, they kind of limit it to banks and armored truck. There's not a lot of other places that armed security is even allowed. So you're going to have a rent-a-cop up there with a stick and a can of mace if an actual school shooter or any other violent person comes through. Because you keep thinking school shooter, I'm also thinking a hobo with a knife, which, funny enough, one of the rejects, I didn't even include it in this, was the video and news article from Melbourne where guns are illegal and it's the most successful gun buyback program ever, right? Mm-hmm. But a guy went on a stabbing rampage in Melbourne. The police were on the scene by the time of the third victim, and I think the victim total got up to 11, counting the police.
What?
He was stabbing cops too. They had to wait to a specific, and he was identified as a terrorist. It was a terrorist stabbing. And you guys have to laugh. A terrorist stabbing? No, right. It happens in countries where you ban guns. It still happens.
Unit.
Right. Absolute unit. It was a mad lad a little bit, right? Because the man brought a knife to a nothing fight because they don't have the tools to protect themselves. So they had to wait for the specific unit that was armed to deal with the situation. The funny part is the cops actually had guns with them, firearms that were loaded with beanbags. They got them down on the ground like 4 or 5 times, but their procedures and policies prevent the average beat cops from just jumping on top of the guy and arresting him.
I was going to say, at that point, you just stomp on the fucker till he stops moving.
I'm not even saying killing him. Just
No,
make
I mean,
sure
stop
he's
it.
not a
He's
threat.
unconscious. Fucking God.
Oh, by the way, for the chat, yes, the DARE program was a joke, but it did lead to bigger community outreach programs.
And some really cool T-shirts.
So this guy was able to stab 11 people before the actual cops apparently got there to stop him.
Jesus Christ.
And you say things like that just don't happen anywhere else. Like, oh, we never have mass shooters, or oh, we don't have it on the scale that you Americans do. It does happen elsewhere. Like, you can actually Google mass stabbing Australia, and it's been about one a year for the past 15 to 20 years. I'm not even kidding. Like, I actually did a little bit of research. Like, wow, they actually have a mass stabbing in a metropolitan area, like a shopping center or something, once a year, every year for 20 years. That's comparable to the rate of, like, by per capita population. That's on par with the rate of shootings in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't a gun diatribe or anything like that. I guess we can get off of this for a minute.
I want to read this one statement before we move on.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So this section, it says, but in Palatine, there's opposition to anyone bringing guns inside of a school building. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Personally, I don't know why you would ever want anyone with a loaded gun in a school around children. Katie Ulrich said. Well, Katie, you don't live in reality. Katie, you might want to rethink your position on this situation.
What if you just reply to her like, what if it was a police officer protecting your child from a criminal?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, besides that, can I speak to your manager? You can hear it coming out of her mouth next.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
She has that haircut, and we know exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Pixie cuts.
So on down to the thing that was apparently pissing you guys off the most. The FDA is to crack down on menthol cigarettes and flavored vape.
You want to talk about the definition of a fucking nanny state on this? Like, dude, like, okay. So yes, back, I think it's like 2010, the Obama administration issued out a new regulation through the FDA, which banned the...
we call that Matt's red pill moment.
Exactly. Banned the idea of flavored cigarettes to just strictly normal tasting tobacco and menthol. Now, I am not...
Oh, no, give them what was included in that, because I got the strawberry flavored cigarettes and the cherry flavored, but what else was included? What really pissed you off?
They banned cloves. Clove cigarettes, Dejarum Blacks, are not allowed to be sold in the fucking United States.
Because everybody knows the kids love the clove flavor.
And so I want to say this. All I'm going to say is this. Re-enlistment rates for blacks have now dropped to 0%.
Poof. Spicy. That's a spicy take. So I'm going to read this here. So FDA to crack down on menthol cigarettes flavored vapes, right? So in a major new effort to curb smoking, a top U.S. health official pledged, probably a cuck, Thursday to try to ban menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars and tighten rules governing the sale of most flavored versions of electronic cigarettes. Okay, so when they banned selling Dejarum Blacks, right? This is actually when the vape, not Dejarum Blacks, but when they banned flavored cigarettes. This is when you actually look at the flavor vapes exploding onto the market.
Yeah,
because they banned these fucking cigarettes that were regulated to people above the age of 18 or older, and you piss people off like me, who would every once in a while and occasionally buy a pack of clove cigarettes because I enjoyed the way they tasted. I enjoyed the crackle, the sensation, all of the things that go into smoking a cigarette, right?
Clove cigarette was a good time.
Yeah, as just like a special dessert on top of.
When I was smoking them, it was the vanilla ones.
Yeah,
the vanilla and clove. For some reason, that was just really good. But I never thought, hey, you know what? This would be really good if I was 12.
Right.
Yeah. For me, I'm kind of annoyed because like I've never got to enjoy what you guys got, so it's pissed me off because like, well, fuck, I don't get to try this experience now.
And quick aside of facts,
even the cigar that was delicious.
Quick aside of facts, just a fun note here. this caused the great debate, which was about like Swisher Sweets and other such, which was they were not flavored tobacco. They were actually flavored wrappings. So you could have a flavored wrapper, but you could not have flavored tobacco.
Right.
Wow.
Because
so we can put all the sugar and shit on the wrapper that we want to, but the tobacco can't taste sweet. Got it.
Which is what the company that made Dejarums did, was they basically converted all of their cigarettes that get sold in the States to cigarillos.
Yep.
A little bit bigger, a little bit different paper. Similar thing. I don't smoke them anymore because like the tobacco
still got banned because the tobacco was flavored.
Right. And it hits a little bit harder than a normal cigarette, which cloves also hit kind of hard to begin with. You have to have a little bit of a constitution to be able to
not die,
to not cough your fucking lungs out.
If you haven't smoked before, they can turn you green.
Yeah. You gotta kind of work up into it. So the proposed restrictions were aimed mainly at reducing smoking in kids. About half of teens who smoke cigarettes choose menthols, and flavored e-cigarettes have been blamed for a recent increase in teen vaping rates.
Wait. Let's all just take a moment and realize how much this next sentence will piss off a particular Belgian we all know.
I will not allow a generation of children to become addicted to nicotine through e-cigarettes. Scott.
I will not allow. Wait, what?
Scott Gottlieb.
It's not your decision, Scott. Scott.
German pride intensifies.
Commissioner of one of the most overfunded branches of the United States government said in a statement.
Right. Health advocates say a menthol ban would have greater impact on the health of Americans, but it would probably take years to put in place. Maybe?
Yeah, because the concept is the shelf life of tobacco in proper storage is nearly infinite.
Yeah.
If it's an airtight packaging, like 100% airtight packaging, technically tobacco almost gets better with age, like a fine wine, until the leaves have decomposed into carbon.
Right.
Basically.
But so they would have to be banning inventories of months and years of harvests of menthol cigarettes.
Yeah. And the changes for e-cigarettes could kick in within a few months.
Ban vape shops. I'm down.
You know what?
Ban vape nation.
I will be okay with giving up my menthol cigarettes if we get rid of vapes. Do you vape, bro?
Do you vape, bro? Yeah, just
sounds like such a stupid thing to get angry about. But anybody that's listening going, what does this have to do with anything in identity politics or anything? This is the state stepping too far into your fucking day-to-day life under the guise of, won't someone think of the children? Like, this is how they get you when they go like to the full corporate level. This is how they get you when they step into the highest level of government agencies. They don't even get elected to these positions half the time. They get appointed to them. There's no election for the head of the FDA. So when they start making arbitrary decisions, it's committee law. And they start claiming to know what's best for you through these committees with very few checks and balances put on inside of them.
If I want to blow my lungs out by smoking cigarettes till the day I'm fucking dead, that's my choice.
Yeah. And if I want to smoke and take some fat dubs on some motherfuckers, I should be allowed to.
Oh, for sure. And getting back to the idea, like, I grew up in the 90s, man. Like, some of the most
90s alert.
Some of the most effective propaganda against big tobacco came out in the 90s. I am well aware of the health risks, right? I just don't give a fuck because I enjoy the effects that nicotine has on my body in regards to the mental high that I get. The act of smoking a cigarette is one of the most soothing things I've ever done in my entire life. And personally, fuck off. Literally, just fuck off. I adhered to the idea of going outside to smoke a cigarette, which, because I get that. I'm around a bunch of people that might not smoke. I should be considerate, and it probably shouldn't be not necessarily banned in law, but like if a business is like, we don't allow smoking here, can you get the fuck out? Like, yeah, okay, gotcha. Completely okay with that.
Well, here the article, we can continue to read the entire thing, but it even says down below, smoking has been declining for more than 5 decades. Some 42% of U.S. adults smoked in the early 1960s. I want to say those are the glory days, but last year the rate was down to 14%, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention.
It's fucking dying.
Experts credit anti-smoking campaigns, cigarette taxes, and smoking bans for most of the decline in the adult rate. But some say adult smokers switching to e-cigarettes have also helped in recent years. The health benefits or the health problems with e-cigarettes are still out for debate because it's mostly water vapor. You don't even burn anything to get it.
All I'm saying is I'm going to now just take up vaping just to torture Matt. I'm just going to take fat rips in front of you.
I fucking hate vapor.
We will never hang out in real life.
Never.
Gonna throw me in a garbage can.
The cigarette smoking rate is even lower among high school students, about 9%, according to the latest figures, which they don't really want to tell you that earlier than that it was probably like 11 or 13. It's going down. It's not a popular habit anymore, especially with millennials having less money. You can't afford to smoke anymore. Like, that sounds stupid to say, but you really can't. It's an expensive habit. It's between, if you're a pack-a-day smoker, like in some areas, like our areas is notoriously cheap for tobacco. It's not the cheapest in the country. It's like $5 for a pack of Marlboros or 6. In Missouri, you get down to 4 or 5. There are areas in the country in like New York and Chicago, the really metropolitan areas, the liberal strongholds, where it's $12 a pack in some areas.
When I go up to Chicago for any event, I make sure I bring cigarettes with me.
And this is what pisses you off, is you realize that the tobacco is even grown in the United States, so it doesn't even justify like an import tax or anything. And that's the prices that people in like Denmark and Netherlands and everything pay for our cigarette tobacco when we ship it over. They pay the same rate as we do in the United States. It's being made too expensive to smoke, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a forcing that. It's a little bit of nanny stating and everything like that. Let's make sure it's a luxury for them, and they know that it's bad for them. Okay, I'm with you. And let's ban them flavoring it. All right, this is fucking stupid.
I think it's gone too far. The line is here and no further, guys.
You see, red meat actually has a lot of health, has some health benefits, but it can be really bad for you if you eat too much. So we're going to tax putting salt.
Fined 1 credit for a violation of the morality statute.
Yes, we're going to put some. If you put more than 100 milligrams per 3 pounds of beef of sodium on your food, it now jumps up in price $500 per pound. What? That's not how you do that.
Dude, like when I read shit like this, I always think back to the movie Demolition Man. Like every single time. Like, and I'm just like, that fucking world is terrible. God awful. Your idea of a state in that is everything deemed bad for you is illegal? No, fuck that.
And you get taxed and fined for swearing.
Yeah. I fucking love watching that movie.
This is where they're going to worm their way into your lives and start telling you what you can and can't eat. This is the stuff that happens in the UK with the sugar tax, the cake taxes, and everything else that Americans make fun of, and even the UK people make fun of a lot of time.
And yet the UK people don't have the fucking balls to just... Listen, all I'm saying is take 1 page from the French, whip out the guillotine, my dudes. What the fuck you doing?
Or throw all the sugar in the harbor. Whatever works. Yes. Anyway.
Yeah. Throw it in a
game. But that if they're all right paying it, I say that's fine for them. I'm saying here, this is ridiculous. We can't let it get any worse than this.
No, hell no.
Like, even if this goes through, it can't get. If we ever let it get worse than this, we cannot be the frog in the cream.
No, hell no. This is bad enough. I was pissed off when they banned Dejarum Blacks, because I'm like, okay, I get you. I was just like, I don't understand it because I'm already smoking a fucking cigarette, right? What the fuck is the point of having me decide what fucking flavor I have to pick from, right? Like, get the fuck out of my purchases. Like, this is some shit that will really piss me off to no end. It's because I know it's bad for me and I don't care. I know cheeseburgers are bad for me. I don't give a fuck. I enjoy cheeseburgers and cigarettes. Shit that's bad for me. I don't care.
Here's the thing that'll make you laugh a little bit. Do you know they actually sell like nicotine-free vape juice?
Yeah.
So there are literally people that are just inhaling flavored vapor.
Yeah.
That will be banned.
Right.
You don't have the option to, like, imagine you put cherry flavoring in your dehumidifier. or your humidifier when you're sick. Like that technically could be considered illegal now.
Right.
What?
That's absurd. That is absurd.
That's how they get you. That's how it starts, man.
This type of shit right here. This right here is the thin edge of the wedge. Right here. Fuck all of this. Fuck every.
It's been happening for a while too. Like you said, this is something that happened in 2010, and they've just started to normalize it. It can't get normalized.
Right.
You have a right to pollute your own body. Your own body.
I have body autonomy. God damn it.
Yeah.
Now this. We'll switch up here. A couple more articles, and we're done.
Oh, the one article I don't want to say we're not going to do. I just realized it warrants some more research. So let's. I
was just gonna say we've been going for quite a while.
Let's get to the hard issue.
All right.
Big dick energy.
I got this one.
All right.
1 million Viagra pills stockpiled in UK over fears of hard Brexit.
Hard.
Oh, it's so hard. So such a big Brexit, and it's so hard. It's a big veiny Brexit.
Robbing. As
the UK hurtles towards crashing out of the EU with no deal next March, some businesses are preparing for the worst. Remember, this is the worst that could happen. Apparently,
the worst is we don't got dick pills.
Everybody makes fun of America for boner pills, but we've yet to stockpile them.
Yeah,
we've yet to have the U.S. boner pill reserve. Digital healthcare company Zava are based in London and specialize in prescribing sexual health treatments. Man, that's a great word. That's just a great phrase. Sexual health treatments, not boner pills. Sexual health for patients who are embarrassed about going to see their GP. The company, who have 1 million active patients in the UK, is company who has 1 million active patients in the UK, is now building up an emergency supply to make sure they can continue to fulfill their patients' prescriptions. Woof. Zava, whose customers include Superdrug, a creative name, usually has 2 weeks of stock. However, Chief Executive David Meinertz has revealed the firm plans to build up a 3 or 4 month supply of boner pills by the end of the year. He said, we've gone through the different medicines. Like, okay, so you guys, I'm sure you two are familiar, anybody listening in, the blank will be lost if hard Brexit occurs meme is getting sold. Everything from drinking water to beef to cars to literally rubber for wheels. They've gone after everything to scare people or scare people away from Brexit. I'm only fascinated by the people that believe it.
Right. Because as if the UK will just be magically lifted off the face of the fucking planet and shot into outer space.
Thanos snap.
Yeah.
This is a US produced prescription pill. So let's get beyond boner pills, all right? All right, let's get beyond the idea that it's boner pills and just think for a moment. This is a US produced good.
Yeah.
It's not even made in the EU unless they're licensed to it. You're telling me America can't ship you some boner pills?
Like we did in World War I and II?
Like, yeah. Like, what's really going to happen here? Like, what's the next? You're out of pepperoni for your pizzas? All right, we got some Italians in New York. They're going to set you up.
We got some Italians.
Little Vinny and Jimmy on the corner store. They got like 5 pounds to go. Let's go. Let's go right now. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
The levels of hysteria over the idea of a hard Brexit is laughable at this point. The fact that like they're going to just magically,
whether you agree with it or not, the hysteria they're trying to generate is stupid.
It's dumb.
Impressive.
At this point, I am actually kind of impressed the levels that they'll go to try to fucking convince people that this is a terrible idea. Like you have to like, man, there's somebody sitting like, just imagine this as a scenario. There's people that are sitting in like this is so laughable that it kind of imagine it like I kind of think of it as like a Monty Python sketch, right?
Oh, I was going to challenge a UK liberalist or anybody else to write a fan fiction where Jeremy and Teresa are having a very hard time post-Brexit because the lack of supply of medicine is actually affecting the romantic life. So they have to figure out new ways to spice it up. Maybe throw in a little lingerie. Maybe Corbyn does his best Barry White at karaoke night. You know what I'm saying? Let's get creative. Let's do some creative writing here and really let the issues be known to the people before Brexit happens.
May comes out in a jackboot costume, just full on SS. Fucking bend over, Jeremy.
Socialize me, baby. Yeah.
But yeah, like if
this ass belongs to everybody.
If the Monty Python boys were still making the flying circus, I'm assuming something like this would just be like the next fucking week sketch. Like this is just one of those things I'm just thinking about is just ripe to just be lambasted and lampooned across the entire, because it's like it's not gonna turn into Somalia because they fucking left the EU. Like that's what they're trying to say. Is like, oh my God, we're gonna end up in socialist Russia. You might, but but
with all the communists running around,
right? But it's not gonna turn in like we saved them once, two times. We'll do it again.
Like, yeah, well, what's the next thing?
Guys.
Hard Brexit could see end of orange marmalade. Like, what's the next thing? You know what?
That would be a cause for concern for me. I need my toast with orange marmalade.
I think this will actually speak to anybody that's listening from the UK on a religious level. Is there's a reason they haven't indicated that a hard Brexit might end Marmite, because no one gives a shit. Like they've gone after everything else. But your sardines might see a lack of supply. Oh, well, I kind of prefer lamb or beef for my Sunday roast. So lamb, the lambs will start dying from the lack of EU antibiotics. The America's got that too. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, all this does is strengthen ties with one of our longest allies.
Yeah, and it weakens
allows us to maintain our sovereignty. Like, what's wrong here? Yeah,
that's what's been pissing me off, because it's like, literally all this does is make it so the EU is in a weaker global position, and it strengthens the UK and America. Like,
this isn't like Uncle Sam rescuing a damsel in distress. Think of it more like the UK is a hungry teenager and the United States is grandma's house.
You watch
and it comes in like, oh, I'm just really hungry from the Brexit. And just like, oh, you haven't eaten here? I got some leftover, some potato pancakes, and I got some leftover turkey that was from last week. It's still good. You're gonna love it. You're gonna eat something, sweetie. I'll whip you something up while you're munching on that. That's how this is gonna go down.
Right.
Yarp. God.
So, and if your domestic services like water and power go down overnight, then what were you doing in the first place? Like, why were you importing that across the channel? What's wrong with you?
We're gonna finish up this right here. It says the key ingredient in Viagra is made in the Republic of Ireland, while the pills are manufactured in France. I reference France because that'll be in future episodes, right? That's gonna be a theme that we're gonna weave into this. This is a scavenger hunt for you guys.
I like how it's Viagra too. Though I know you want to finish up, but there's Cialis. We got like 30 boner pills over here.
Right.
Like we got backups for this. Don't worry.
Frenchman screams, "Aloha snack bar."
There will be no lack of boners over Brexit, I assure you.
Right. But yeah, it's gonna be a scavenger hunt. I want you guys to find the theme around France.
It'll be date night. We can date night out of it, but the couple goes out and they find the boner pill.
Absolutely.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Oh, guys, we're at the end. What have we learned?
We learned, Mr. Matt, that the EU is retarded.
Well,
what did we learn today, kids?
Well, I mean, on a serious note, we learned that the migrant crisis has not points of hilarity to it, but just the spin on it is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
Spin around.
Next week, I'm actually going to try to prepare. When I say a little bit better, I'm actually going to bring one of those articles from of all people, the libertarians that are trying to say that it is completely in line with the law for people to cross the border. Basically, there's no such thing as crossing the border illegally, is how one person worded it. And I went, that's not how this works.
I can blow that argument apart with one line from a movie, and it's the movie, I think it's Blow, with Johnny Depp when he's running drugs across the Mexican border, because he made an argument in court saying, all I did was I took a little growing plant across an imaginary line, right? What's the harm in that? And the federal judge looks at him and is like, well, sir, what you did was transport an illegal substance across a line that is, in fact, a real line, breaking federal law, which is why you're going to prison.
Right.
I do want to say this. Here's one thing. I'm surprised you didn't bring up the fact that MSNBC disproved most of the fucking bullshit because they had someone on the ground literally say, yeah, it's mostly young fighting age men, not women and children.
Oh, God.
You should bring up that video and just the Young Turks hot take of, if you just cross the border, then you're legal. You just have to go through this one place. Like, that's not how that works. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah. We can actually plan to focus on the migrant crisis a little bit next week, but with fair assessment to our foreign or non-U.S. users or listeners, viewers, whatever you want to call it, we'll try to have a little bit preparation for international things as well next week. We had to lambaste some of our contributors here and say, get us some international articles.
Underlay.
Yeah, honestly, like the EU thing is just good fun, but just the hysteria that's still brewing over hard Brexit, and it does loom closer and closer for them, which just makes it all that more ironic. They're trying to scare people out of it. It's not going away. It's going to happen. They just need to shit and get off the pot all in one motion.
Oh boy, I can't. Wait.
Well,
all right, guys.
See you folks next week.
It's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys.
I've been Mark. That's been Pete. This has been Matt. We'll catch you all next time.
I'm Matt. You're not Matt.
You're not Matt.
I'm Matt. I'm Matt.
Oh, damn it. I said I've been Mark. You've been Matt. Shit.
You also said this has been Pete, and that's not been Pete. I've been Pete.
Shit.
We'll switch names next week. How about that?
Yeah.
We'll change the hats. Matt can actually run the stream next week.
All right.
Goodbye, everybody.